Welcome in, everybody, to Around the Felt. We're going to be recapping the Arizona Cardinals 2024 season. I'm your host, Reagan Loescher, here with my co-host, Colin Tong. Like I said, we're going to be giving, the Cardinals a letter grade based off their 2024 season. And then, we'll get into the future a little bit, break down what they've done in free agency so far and kind of where we think they should go in the draft, which different ways they can, really make it a big improvement and, hopefully get into the playoffs under the Gannon era.
Absolutely,
Colin,
man.
Good night or good night.
Good night,
evening.
dude. We just started. We ain't going to bed yet, dude. Come on.
Good evening, Colin.
Yeah,
good
I'm
evening.
doing well. Clearly, I got a lot more juice than you do today, my friend. But I'll start us off here. My grade for the Arizona Cardinals, I gave a solid B. At an 8-9 season, a B might seem a little high. But when you take into consideration they doubled their win total from the year prior, going from 4 to 8 wins, it's pretty impressive. And you got to have confidence in Gannon as your head coach now that he can steer this team in the right direction. Offensively, they were pretty solid. The 12th scoring offense, the 11th total offense, the 7th rushing offense. You got to tip the cap to James Conner. This dude just loves the fantasy football playoffs. He always heats up at the end of the season. He's a tough motherfucker, that's for sure. And at 29 years old, he's still productive for you. To the point where he took Trey Benson in the draft last year, and he barely saw the field. But you know what? Conner was very productive. Kyler was good, not great. I mean, I still have question marks on him, like long-term. Is he a quarterback that can win you a Super Bowl? But, he had an okay year in my mind. Marv was somewhat disappointing out at receiver after taking him 4th overall. I think Neighbors was better last year, to be honest with you. I think Brian Thomas is better last year, to be honest with you. I think even Ladd McConkey was better last year, to be honest with you. And Marv was in a great position to succeed as the clear number 1 target. But at receiver position, that is, because Trey McBride, as I'm about to get into, is an absolute dog. So you got to tip the cap to McBride. But, Marv had some big
in football, baby.
Marv had some big games. But overall, I thought it was a somewhat disappointing season for him, given the expectations. The defense was definitely better than I thought they were going to be. The 15 scoring defense. When you looked at that roster on paper before the season, I was like, this might be the worst defense in terms of personnel, right? But Gannon's getting the most out of them, particularly along the defensive line, which we'll get into what they've done this offseason thus far, which I absolutely love. But I think it was a solid improvement year over year. That's a B for me at 8-9. Now the Arizona Cardinals, you know what? You were on the cusp of potentially pushing for the wild card last year. Let's see what you can do in 2025. It's time now in year 3 again and to start making a push for the playoffs.
Yeah, I ended up giving him a C. I know it was
a C? Whoa. You always talk about expectations. Did you think this team was going to win 8 games?
I thought they could because they had a healthy Kyler Murray, and I kind of left this season saying, like, is he even the guy? I mean, down the stretch, he started out so hot. I mean, he was 21 and he had 21 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, but 10 of those came down the stretch. I mean, he really fell apart. It's just like he starts out hot and then but I mean, outside of against the 49ers, in week 18 when he went 4-0, prior to that, he was 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 0-0, 2-2, 1-2. 0-1, 1-0, 0-0. So it was a lot of just bad games, and they just fell apart at the end. I mean, they went, they really had a chance for the playoffs, and they went 2-5 in their last 7. And Kyler played terrible. He didn't play like the MVP candidate like we know he can be and have seen before. When he was getting more healthy as the season progressed, and his play went downhill. So I kind of left the season saying hey, I thought this team could be good. I thought Kyler Murray would be the big reason for it. But right now, I'm I don't even know if he's the long-term answer. I think this year is going to be a big year for the Cardinals. And, based off of how he plays, if it's another year where it's a hot start and he kind of falters and they don't make the playoffs, you got to move on, because I don't know if he'll ever figure it out, because he has yet to prove that he can continue to play, from week 1 to week 18 and play at, a high level. We just haven't seen it. It's a totally different quarterback down the stretch.
I agree with that 100%. You can't start off hot every year, and then when it starts to get cold out, you start to fall apart, because you're going to have to go and play at Philadelphia.
Because they were 6-4 and we're in first place in the division, and they They, like I said, finished 2-5 in the last
Yeah,
7
like
games.
if you want to actually make a run and achieve the ultimate goal, you're going to have to go play outdoors at a team like Philadelphia, or like a really difficult atmosphere in the cold weather. And when Kyler Murray hits November and Call of Duty comes out, like there's just something about him where he kind of starts to fall back a little bit. And I don't know if it's just teams are adjusting to what he's doing and he can't make the adjustment back, or if it's just he's has small stature and he gets beat up and he's banged up down the stretch and just not the same player. Like he doesn't use his legs as much. Like I don't know what it is with them, but it's a great point. And it's probably the biggest concern I have with the Cardinals right now is you gave him such a big contract. And it's not like he's so bad where you're like, oh, we have to move on, like a Deshaun Watson type of deal.
No.
But it's not like he's good enough where you're like, I'm comfortable we're paying him this money and I'm confident he can lead us to a deep postseason run.
Yeah, and I mean, I am confident that if they do move on from him after next year, like they'll still get a good haul. Like some team will totally overpay and give him multiple first rounders for him. So at the very least, I mean, I just think it's getting to a point where it's like, can he even get us into the playoffs? And the team's obviously trending in the right direction. They're going to address some needs in the draft, and hopefully Marv takes a nice year 2 jump. I mean, we know Trey McBride's a stud. Obviously, they re-signed James Conner, and they obviously took a day 2 pick on Trey Benson last year, so you'd like to see him get more incorporated and see the defense continue to progress. But they need to take a big jump and at least get a wild card next year. Or I still think they could win the division. I still think the division's pretty open. I wouldn't say the Rams, Seahawks, or 49ers are light years ahead of them. I mean, obviously the 49ers had their injuries, and Seattle seems like they're going in a different direction, but I totally think they have what it takes to win. Kyler just needs to ultimately step up and prove he's the guy.
Yeah, it seems like this was the Niners division to be had for the next several years, but after their debacle last year and the amount of talent they lost, you look at the Rams as the division champ last year at 10 wins, Seattle at 10 wins, Arizona's at 8. And it's like, you know what? It's definitely the race is tightened in this division for sure, where, I'd say probably the Rams are the leaders in the clubhouse going into next season, but I wouldn't be shocked if Arizona somehow won this division or if the Niners bounced back and won it. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's going to be a very competitive division.
Oh, for sure. I think any of these teams can win it next year. Definitely.
But going in the offseason here, the big addition, Josh Sweat, signed over from the Eagles. I think it's a home run signing for him. Yeah, they gave him a ton of money. Whatever. You're going to have to in free agency. They had a ton of money, right? You looked at their defensive line last year. You were like, yuck. That's probably the worst defensive line in football. The fact that they did as well as they did on defense is pretty impressive. Shout out to Gannon for that. But you added a premier pass rusher in Josh Sweat. Now, he's not the elite of the elite, but he's damn good. And he's coming over after winning a Super Bowl title. Obviously played under Gannon in Philadelphia. So it makes a lot of sense. You have the familiarity there. You have a leader amongst a very young defense now. They also added Dalvin Tomlinson, that defensive line, another veteran, to add some more beef. So I like what they've done, really trying to shore up that defense. And I think they're going to go defense in the first round of the draft as well.
Yeah, I mean, you would think. I mean, they obviously have a lot of talent on the offense. I mean, you could always go offensive line, but you would think this team's really, lacking some big playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, obviously, still have Budda Baker, but he's aging and stuff. So you'd like to see them get some more big-time playmakers, whether it's, an edge rusher like you've highlighted in some of the other pods. Like, this is a very stacked edge rusher class, so you'd imagine they'll have a couple options there.
Yeah, Mikael Williams could make sense. Shamar Stewart could make sense. Like, there's a lot of guys in that range. Mike Green could make a lot of sense. Like, I thought about all three of those guys, pass rusher. I also considered interior offensive line. You got Paris Johnson at left tackle. You feel pretty good about that. You took him very high in the draft a couple years ago.
Yeah.
You have Jonah Williams at right tackle. Is he replaceable? Yeah. But is he the biggest need along that offensive line? No. I think they definitely need more help on the interior. But, you could consider a Kelvin Banks at this spot at number 16. But ultimately, I went defense in my Big Tongue Mock 1.0, which is releasing soon. I went Jaylon Baron, the corner out of Texas. And Baron stood out to me because he has very good ball skills. He had 5 picks last season, but he's also played over 600 snaps at both outside and in the slot over the last 2 seasons.
A
So
lot of football.
that versatility that he offers, where he can move around the back end of that defense, I think is very valuable. When you have a guy like him and Budda Baker in that back end, I think, you know what, we start to have something with this secondary, and I think it makes a lot of sense. If Will Johnson slides to 16, I think that's also a home run pick for him. I would take Will Johnson over Jaylon Baron personally,
Yeah, I
but
was going to ask.
Baron's getting a lot of love, and in my
Yeah, I'm
scenario,
looking at ESPN right now. They have him actually ranked higher than Will Johnson now.
yeah, no, some people do have Jaylon Baron ranked higher, which, not me, but I don't mind it at all. And Barron's definitely got a lot of talent. It'd be a great addition to this Cardinals secondary.
Yeah, I like Will Johnson a little bit more just because I like that. I feel like a lot of the good corners that have come into the league are these like bigger framed guys, and Will Johnson being 6'2" kind of, fits that mold of like
Yeah.
the Sauce, Pat Surtain, like these bigger guys that just can dominate and be physical freaks. But it sounds like, I mean, either way it goes, they're going to have an opportunity at both guys. I would think at least one of them will be here. I mean, we know Hunter will be gone, but they'll definitely have a chance to, take one of these guys.
No,
Um,
100%.
And then free agency wise, I mean, I know it didn't seem like, obviously Sweat was the big signing from Philadelphia. So I think that'll help a lot. And, Gannon gets another one of his guys, that's the cool thing. Cause, I didn't even put that together at first, but now I'm thinking more about it. I'm like, yeah, that's one of his guys from Philly.
Yeah,
The
dude.
guy he
Yeah.
developed.
I'm surprised I didn't bring in any more Philadelphia players, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's still possible, but it seems like free agency at this point is kind of, there's not going to be a lot more dominoes to fall, and the ones that will maybe will be after the draft. But they
Yeah,
also don't have a lot of picks this year either, the Cardinals. I was just looking. I believe they have let me pull it up. I believe they have 6 picks, which isn't, the most ideal.
yeah,
Yeah,
especially for a team
they
like
have
this.
6. Yeah. They have their first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Yeah, they just didn't make a lot of deals. So yeah, they only have 6 this year, so they're gonna have to make those picks count for sure if they really want to take that jump.
Yeah, and you know what? They have a ton of holes to fill. Like, I think any position, probably outside of running back, is on the table for him, considering you took Trey Benson last year. And
I'd be
Kyler
shocked
Murray,
if
like,
they went.
you're fine
Yeah,
with Kyler Murray.
Benson.
You're not going to
Yeah,
go quarterback, right? You're not going to go quarterback, but they could take another receiver on day 2 or 3. Certainly, they could
yeah, to
even
pair with
they
Michael
could.
Wilson and Marv.
Yeah, I don't see them going receiver at 16 here. I think there's going to be better players on the board, and with how many holes they have, I think they'll go a different direction. But they could still
Plus,
go edge.
McBride is kind of like a wide receiver at this point.
Yeah, McBride's a stud. Like, I
Yeah.
absolutely love McBride. So they're not going to go. Yeah, they're not going to go tight end. Not going to go running back. Not going to go quarterback. They can go offensive line. They can go receiver. They can go anywhere on defense, and I'm fine with it. I just think they got to stick to their board and go best player available.
Yeah. No, definitely. And you would think Gannon being a defensive-minded coach, it's probably going to be defense over offense.
Yeah, I'd put a lot of money. It's a defensive player here at 16.
But you want to get Mr. Drock in here?
Yeah, let's get Drock in here, baby. What's going on,
right
Drock?
on
What's up,
cue.
guys? It's Mr. Drock. My one question for you guys, speaking of Kyler, was paying him that $230 million contract a mistake, or did the team just fail to support him properly?
Both.
Man, I guess it's both, right?
I mean,
go
also
both.
the injury doesn't help either.
Yeah, the torn ACL doesn't help. The fact that the talent around him wasn't ideal. The fact that they switched coaches isn't ideal. But it looks like they made the right decision because they fell apart in the back half of the season with Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, the only concern right now was Kingsbury the problem, or is Kyler Murray the problem in terms of the second half of the season not keeping pace with what you did earlier, right? And it's tough because the common denominator right now is Kyler Murray, and we just discussed, is he the long-term solution that can lead you to the Super Bowl? I don't know. I don't think he will lead.
I don't even
the
know
Super Bowl.
the Super Bowl. Like, we need to see him bring him back to the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so I think it's a little bit of both. The injury, absolutely. The changing of staffs, Murray not having a full season, not being consistent enough to get it done, but then also looking around him, being like, you know what, he really has never had a great offensive line in front of him. You just got him a number 1 wide receiver in Marv last year. You got McBride, though, so you're comfortable with his weapons. It's about him going out there and getting it done.
Yeah, my gut tells me he's not going to be on the Cardinals next year. I think they're going to move on from him, trade him in the offseason, but we'll see. I hope I'm wrong because, it would be cool to see him finally, have a full season and, not falter after Call of Duty comes out or whatever, whatever excuse you want to make for him falling off in the second half of the year. But still, I think the contract is worth it. Like, he's shown enough that you want to pay him. You spent the first round pick on him. Like, the numbers are inflated, but still, I mean, if you look at their other options out there, there's nobody better right now that they could get. So it really comes down to, do they trade and try drafting someone else? But, we'll see, because the roster is getting better. So the excuses go out the window.
Yeah, I think that's a likely scenario if they are going to decrease back to where they were in like 2023 levels, like a 4, 5, 6 win team, and they're starting to regress. Then maybe they're like, all right, Kyler's not our guy if Kyler struggles again. But if they are around the same, like 500-ish kind of ball, that's when it gets difficult to make the decision, right? Because then you got to go all in one way or the other.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I'm
Yes,
not
sir.
rooting against Kyler. I'm hoping has a good year. I'd still love to see him win MVP one of these days. I called him to win the MVP the year he almost won, and he fell off at the end, so that one stung a little bit. I'm always right there on the MVP, and some bullshit happens in the last couple weeks.
Yeah, you are pretty close, but only one of us has correctly predicted an MVP over the last 2 years. So
that's right. Pays to be chalky.
I don't know. I don't know about that, but Cardinals fans, hit us up in the comments. Let us know. Is Kyler Murray the long-term answer? What do you want to do at pick number 16 in the draft? Do you have trust in Jonathan Gannon? We'd love to hear from you. Like, comment, subscribe. We appreciate you. Reagan, any last words, my friends?
Yeah, Trey McBride is the number 1 tight end. I will stand by that, Cardinals fans. So,
Brock Bowers exists.
Yeah, that's fine with me, man. He does exist, but he ain't better than Trey McBride. So, Cardinals fans, I will die on that hill with you guys. He is a fucking stud. He is the number 1 tight end in the league. I would take him on my fantasy team. I would take him on my favorite NFL team any day of the week. That guy is a beast. And watch out, one of these years he will lead the league in receptions.
That is funny, because Brock Bowers was the fantasy tight end 1 as a rookie. So I like that you pointed that out.
Kyler's got to get him more touchdowns, and fantasy football is not everything.
Okay.
Fantasy is not reality, bro.